I was at rock bottom after my wife left me. It was a sweet woman with dimples who rescued me when I was questioning my own purpose in life. At that time, I never imagined our relationship would turn out this way. My name's Logan. After graduating from college, I landed a job in a top-tier company. Typically, after the training period for new employees, they'd be assigned to a branch office near the headquarters. But I was assigned directly to the headquarters. The job was rigorous, only good results were acceptable. It was demanding from the beginning. Determined not to fall behind my seniors, I strived hard and rapidly improved my skills. I graduated from a prestigious university, always loved studying, and aimed for the top. Perhaps it was sheer luck that brought me this far. However, these two qualifications seemed to naturally boost my image. I'm fairly tall, but I'd say I have a pretty average appearance. Fashion isn't exactly my strong suit. Still, thanks to my credentials, I often got approached by women. My 20s went by in a whirlwind, with both work and personal life keeping me on my toes. After working at the company for several years, I, at the age of 30, professionally might not have any official title yet, but I felt I was on the brink of becoming a supervisor. On the personal front, I started dating someone a friend introduced during a night out, and just last year, we tied the knot. We moved into a reasonably spacious and stylish apartment with a great view and were thoroughly enjoying our newly life. With my salary, we were comfortable, and considering our plans to have children, the physical tools and future considerations, my wife chose to be a full-time housewife. Things at work were going smoothly, and every day I would return to a home where my wife was eagerly waiting. Everything seemed to be sailing smoothly, at least up to this point. Then one day, a transfer notice came in. The new location. A rural branch office, quite the contrast from the bustling city I'm accustomed to. The notice did mention supervisor, so it was undeniably a promotion. But having assumed I'd stay at the headquarters, I was visibly shaken. I headed home and broke the news to my wife, but there was no joy in the promotion for me. The first thing out of her mouth was, "Why such a countryside? What's going on?" I was told by HR that they needed my skills at the new location. Even after relaying this to my wife, she seemed far from convinced. Moreover, the new place would require a move. While my wife was struggling to come to terms with it all, we didn't have much time before the move. So we started looking for a new place to live and went for some viewings throughout the day. As we visited multiple places, seeing the town, the buildings, which looked like shabby apartments if we were in the city, her mood progressively soured. On a whim, we drove by the new branch office. The sight of its worn-out walls against the backdrop of a fading town wasn't encouraging. She was speechless. Just seeing this place, she couldn't accept the continuous unsettling events, and our views couldn't align. We ended the day with just the viewings. Once we got home, discussions turned into arguments. Sure, it's labeled as a promotion, but isn't this just a demotion in disguise? If you work there, you'll never get a promotion or raise. We could be living below our means for the rest of our lives, my wife complained in tears. Our discussions reached a deadlock, and before we knew it, a moving day arrived. We decided to keep our electronic appliances in the city apartment for now. I took only my belongings and moved into the new apartment alone for the time being. The plan was for my wife to visit during weekends to see how things played out. However, after several weeks, she still hadn't made peace with the situation, saying, "I can't live here. I can't have the life I want with a husband working in a branch office with a dubious chance at a raise. I don't want it." After being told that by my wife, we ended up divorcing. I guess it's inevitable. Time for a fresh start and to focus on my job. That was my mindset. But the weight of the word divorce hit hard. Often at work, my hands would stop and my thoughts would spiral. I remember how homely my ex-wife was, how she always kept the house clean, and had delicious meals waiting for me. Just hearing her cheerful welcome home would wash all the fatigue away. I thought I'd be fine living alone, but with a divorce, it's lonely and tough. Can't live the ideal life in the countryside. What was my worth after all? Sigh. I sighed loudly even though I was at work. Seeing my distress, some colleagues, feeling sorry for me, invited me out for drinks. You're much more approachable than the previous supervisor. You're doing so well for someone so young. You're sharp and precise, just like when you were at the headquarters. Even some older colleagues were present, and they all refrained from bringing up the divorce, instead encouraging and praising me. With that warmth, I was re-energized. Time has a way of healing things. After a while, I became accustomed to my new life and dedicated myself to the responsibilities at hand. Around that time, our branch was scheduled for an occasional inspection. Logan, long time no see. I'll be here for the week, so let's work well together. Hearing that familiar voice and turning around, I was met by Sarah, a former colleague from the headquarters. Though Sarah is younger than me, her fearless determination is well recognized, making her an adept career woman, especially in the field of inspections. She has the demanding task of traveling to branches nationwide, constantly on the move. Still, Sarah never complains and takes on her duties with unwavering stamina. I've always held her in high regard. Sarah, have you been well? I couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie. My voice grew louder with happiness. Oh, my apologies. I should address you as Miss Connor here, right? Given our current positions, Sarah now held a higher position than I did. After straightening up, I greeted her again, to which she replied with a playful chuckle, "Don't be so formal." She then nudged me with her elbow, just like she used to. When Sarah laughs, adorable dimples form on her cheeks. When it comes to inspections, everyone tends to get a bit tense. But thanks to Sarah's charming demeanor, the atmosphere always settles into a comfortable state, allowing everyone to work as usual. It's quite remarkable. Then that night, I decided to go out to dinner with Sarah. She was staying at a hotel nearby, and since she was planning on dining out, she asked for restaurant recommendations. Even though it was just the two of us having a meal, our conversation was mostly about work. In such a relaxed setting, we could discuss matters we wouldn't have time for at the office, making the time fly by fruitfully. As our meal and conversation neared its end, I noticed Sarah glancing at her watch. "I'm sorry, we've been here quite a while, haven't we? We should probably head out. Your wife might be getting worried," said Sarah as she began to prepare to leave. Seeing the look on my face, she tilted her head in confusion. Well, the thing is, I then shared with her that I had gotten divorced. I went into the reasons as well, and as I spoke, Sarah listened attentively, nodding from time to time. She then casually remarked, "You know, with your capabilities, I'd expect you to be back at the main office soon." Surprised by her candid statement, I asked, "What do you mean?" Sarah responded, "It's probably a temporary placement. Once you've turned this branch around, I bet they'll want you back at headquarters." Her tone made it sound like a given. I was curious about where she had gotten such information. Sarah chuckled and said, "Don't underestimate a woman's network." I was all yours, completely absorbed in the conversation. The distance from the city hustle, the divorce, and even though my duties might have been lighter than at the headquarters, perhaps my spirits had been down without me realizing. I had perhaps underestimated myself. Seeing this, Sarah laughed and said, "Do you even realize how talented you are? Your skills are well known at the headquarters, and of course, I'm aware too." She ended on her usual cheerful note, "You better keep up the good work," and gave me a pat on the shoulder. The pain throbbed, but it rekindled my spirit completely. I'll return to the main office someday. With that resolve, I worked even harder. Time flew by, and before I knew it, I was 35. "Thank you, sir," one colleague said. "I'll miss you. I hope to be just like you someday." I received a large bouquet and shook hands with everyone in my department. I worked exceptionally hard as a supervisor, leading our team to great success. I also mentored my successor, who then moved up to a managerial position in recognition of my accomplishments. I have now returned to work at the headquarters, even though I was returning to the same department as before. I got promotion. I'd be joining as a department head. The bustling city atmosphere felt familiar, while the air quality was so-so. I've always loved the vibrant energy of the city. I took a few days off to handle my move and settle down before officially starting at the main office. My colleagues at the headquarters, knowing it would be hard to coordinate once I got busy, decided to throw me a welcome back party during this break. They booked the city's finest upscale restaurant for the celebration, combining 2 private rooms just behind the counter seats. Seeing all those familiar faces and sharing the joy of working together again naturally brought smiles and lively conversations. Just as I thought the day would end on a high note, something unexpected happened. When I looked towards the counter to place an additional order, a customer walking in caught my eye. Looking closer, I realized it was my ex-wife, and she wasn't alone. She was with a man. Our eyes met, and she looked as startled as I felt, freezing in place. The man noticed and asked my ex-wife, "Who's that?" Snapping back to reality, she gave her. I smiled and replied with a sigh, "Oh, that's my ex-husband." The man then said, "Oh, that guy," and looked at me with a wry smile. There wasn't much left to say. She seemed to feel the same, promptly turning her back to me, and both of them took seats at the counter. I didn't let it bother me and continued chatting with my colleagues. However, on my way back from the restroom, my ex-wife called out to me. "Why are you here?" she asked with a cold tone in her voice. "I came back," I replied in the same tone. She laughed dismissively and remarked, "After being demoted, you sure had the guts to come back. You probably screwed up again, didn't you?" Giving me a pitiful look, the man sitting beside her seemed to be asking her about me graduating from a prestigious college and then getting demoted makes no sense, he sneered. Irritated by their comments, I said, "Well then, ready to leave." However, my ex-wife quickly pulled the man close to her and gloated, "He's quite impressive, isn't he?" Without me asking, she began to brag about how he works for a top-tier company, how talented he is, and how his future is so much brighter than mine. Every now and then, she'd throw in a resentful comment about me. From time to time, her bitterness towards me mixed in. As for the man, while he said, "Don't talk like that. It's sad for your ex-husband," he didn't seem entirely displeased with her praise. He chuckled condescendingly at me with every nod he gave. I tried to tune them out, looking for the right moment to head back to my seat. Just then, a colleague heading to the restroom stopped in his tracks. "Hey, isn't that you, Jake?" My colleague recognized the man and addressed him. "Oh, it's a pleasure. Quite the coincidence," Jake responded. It seemed they knew each other. They started chatting lightly, but the man kept stealing glances at me. "Wait, do you work with this guy?" Pointing at me, he asked my colleague. I wonder if they seemed close. My colleague looked surprised that the man didn't recognize me. "Hey, you can't talk to him like that. He's our new department head, and so young and impressive. You should greet him. I mean, seriously, this Mr. Stern, is something else. He's the youngest ever in our company's history to be promoted to this position." My colleague gleefully shared this, briefing me on the details about this Jake guy before taking off. Turns out, this man is a sales rep from a major supplier who frequents our department. After hearing about me from my colleague, the man whispered, "Is Logan the one I've heard rumors about?" His face progressively paled. My ex-wife seemed momentarily stunned but soon snapped, "Wait a minute, you mean he's higher up than you?" and confronted the man with a frustrated look. Still pale-faced, the man muttered something about needing to greet me properly, but was taken aback by my ex-wife's rebuke. There's no point in sticking around to watch their spat. I locked eyes with the man, saying, "So you're Jake, right?" "I'll remember that," with a pleasant smile, then made my way back to my seat. Yet, I could still hear voices from behind. Glancing towards the bar seats, my ex-wife and the man seemed to be having an ongoing dispute. When our eyes met, Jake quickly looked away, urging my ex-wife, "Let's leave now," and quickly settled the bill. With a face portraying sheer frustration, my ex-wife gave me one last glance, then slammed the door on her way out. Soon after, I returned to my dream position at the company's headquarters. From day one, with a hectic schedule, I felt that old buzz, making me even more passionate about my job. Sometime later, I bumped into Jake at work. He immediately approached me, deeply bowing, apologizing for his rudeness that day. I told him I don't mind at all anymore, but given his sincere regret, I offered, "Want to grab some coffee?" I don't mind at all anymore, but given his sincere regret, I offered to grab some coffee. After a couple of sips, he let out a long sigh, finally appearing relaxed. We made small talk about work, but the conversation naturally shifted to my ex-wife. Apparently, they had a falling out. Whether it was her pride or something else, she ended up breaking things off with Jake. I couldn't help but be slightly baffled. Was she so set on snagging a well-educated, hiring man? I feel sorry for my ex-wife too, even though she is beautiful to look at, cheerful and friendly, and has many good qualities. Though Jake came off as a jerk that day, I've heard from others that he's genuinely talented. I cheered him on, telling him to keep his head high. After work, as I stepped out of the office, my phone rang. The screen read Sarah. Before I could finish saying hello on the phone, Sarah Lai started talking. "Hey, it's me. I'm coming back this Sunday." Her voice was as bubbly as ever. Since that inspection, Sarah and I had kept in touch. At first, our conversations were mostly about work. Sarah would often give me a piece of her mind, always offering emotional support. I think the reason I never gave up and aimed higher was probably because of her presence. "I know you better than anyone else. Has some confidence and just do it." That's how she sounds on the phone. Even though she's supposed to be younger than me, it makes me laugh, wondering who's really the older one. Then, on Sunday, I waited for Sarah at the GFK airport lobby. When Sarah saw me, her face lit up with a broad smile, and she hurried over. "I'm back," she said cheerfully, and Sarah hugged me. Being embraced in such a public place, I was taken aback and embarrassingly stuttered, "Welcome back." I tentatively put my arm around Sarah's back, not sure how to react in the situation. Then Sarah looked up at me with an expectant expression and said, "Don't you have something else to say?" I could feel everyone's eyes on us. It was hard to admit, but I looked at her and said, "I love you, Sarah." But she teased, "Is that all? Isn't there more?" making a mischievous face, urging me to say more. I felt like my face was on fire, but I knew I had to say it now. So I gathered my courage and proposed to Sarah right there. As Sarah and I communicated frequently, we became closer. We both knew our feelings for each other were growing. But with Sarah traveling to various branches nationwide and having long overseas business trips, we hardly got a chance to meet. During this time, I once confessed my feelings over the phone, but she told me she wanted to hear it in person. And in time, we officially got married and became husband and wife. "Hey, look, I found this adorable mug and just had to buy it," Sarah said, seeming to have sneakily hidden it among the moving boxes, intending to use it from today. She happily lays the two out side by side and smiles. The new apartment we got for our life together with Sarah. From our high-rise view, I feel even more motivated. She wanted to settle down and had expressed her wish to retire early from her job, but they didn't want to let go of such a valuable employee. After taking the short break, she decided to work part-time at the headquarters. As for me, my role as a department head keeps me extremely busy. It helps that Sarah understands my job. She's good at supporting me and has been a tremendous help. Come on, put your back into it and have a great day every day. Sarah playfully smacks my back as I head out. I think she treats me a little rough, but when she does this, the day goes strangely well. I'll be off now. Take care, Sarah, I tell her. And as I leave, I can't help but notice how her dimples make her smile even more endearing. Today, I have to keep working hard to ensure that smile never fades. I can't always rely on her support. This new chapter of our life is bound to be busy, but I remind myself never to take my wife for granted.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.